Hey everybody, welcome to episode 37 of Pealed Back's LiveCast Conversations with, as always, I'm your host, Gene Bernier. Today, we're actually doing something different. We have two guests on the show today, so this is the first time we're trying this out, and it's working out already great. So today we have Mel Clifford and Trent Janisch, who are both co-creators of the Foundation of Successful Teams. Foundation of Successful Teams is a powerful culture-building training program for business to supercharge teams through building responsibility, engagement, perspective, collaboration, seeing is believing, and topping it all off with trust. Mel is a highly experienced professional director of organizational change and project management. Mel spent his career working in the area of people development, along with delivering large-scale projects within the retail, manufacturing, logistics, finance, IT, and healthcare sectors. Mel's worked across Europe, North America, and China. Mel's personal passion is sharing the key philosophies that creating lasting change in any area of your life is impossible without first completely accepting personal responsibility and recognizing that change is in your hands. Trent is the author of the Canadian Amazon #1 bestseller, 3 Steps to a Better Relationship, and works internationally as a personal development coach and corporate trainer, drawing upon wisdom from such fields as emotional intelligence, resilience, and neuroscience. Trent teaches people to take better charge of their peace and mind, productivity, and the quality of their life at home, socially, and in the workplace. Gentlemen, this is a pleasure to have you both on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Gene, delighted. Looking forward to it all.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Oh, yeah. You're very welcome. So, we always get these started by hearing a little bit about where you came from, and then we're going to kind of get maybe a little bit deeper into, responsibility, FST, and all the good stuff that goes around with it. So let's start with both of you. Obviously, there were some really great things said. My words do not do your journeys justice. So let's talk about how the two of you met and how this partnership started up.
Mel, you want to start?
Sure. Well, I'm not Canadian, and I came to Canada 10 years ago following the recession in Ireland, and decided to do something different, and ended up traveling around and ended up by mistake in Kelowna. And I was attending a networking event around 2013, I think, and I met Trent at it. And we sort of just connected and interested, and we sort of you could feel the connection between both of us, and that's how we met. And then we started working together. So
yeah, I'll just jump in a little bit here, because Mel actually had a program that he had developed back in Ireland called Building a New Way Forward, and the partner that he had built that with, it was for people going through divorce in corporations, and the fellow passed away, so Mel sort of put it on the back shelf. And when he came to Canada and traveled a bit, and we met, one of the things that I had on my business card was divorce recovery for clientele and helping them deal with the emotional resilience regarding that. And Mel saw that, and then he met a divorce mediator, and he says, we could bring this project that I did in Ireland back to life. And that was the first project we did together back in 2013. And I did a whole 2 sections on relationship dynamics and communication and what causes breakdown and how to build it back up. And from there, we kept on doing things. And then Mel actually was doing some speaking and teaching at the college. He should probably tell this story, but and then he
You tell him. You know it better than me.
Well, he was speaking. He was doing a talk for the project management group, and they were. It was on, what was it called? What did you call that one? It wasn't Seeing is Believing. It was
no, it was
golden, right?
Silence is Golden in projects. Yeah.
So, and in that, he had a fellow come up to him and ask him some questions afterward, and said, "It was really good. Would you mind coming and putting a little something, a day program for our group of project managers here at our company?" And it ended up being Disney Interactive. And Mel was putting that together and asked me to audit the program just to get an outside perspective and see where we might be able to hone it. And then I suggested that maybe we should have a follow-up in a few weeks, because I said one of the things that really bother me about full day programs is people just learn what they learn and then they go off and you don't really hold them accountable for using it. So we came back a few weeks later and did a half day to find out how well they were applying it. And so that held them accountable. And then they wanted to do it with their branding group, a full program. So we got together and Mel brought me in and we designed a 7-module program that has evolved now over the past 7 years to become the foundation of successful teams, which then we'll probably talk more of as you ask questions. But but that's how we met. That's the question that you did ask. But do you want little stories too, or that's sort of?
Well, wherever this goes, there's no set script really. So it's just about, what I like to share with this live cast is the gems that shake out from people's stories and the paths that they've taken, right? Because there's always going to be somebody that's looking up to both of you going, wow, I can't wait to be able to do what they do, and being able to shake some of that free definitely helps those people along. So that's really the purpose here. So there's no structure. This is just about fun, feeling out where those go, really.
Well, we shared a lot of values, and when we worked together over the programs, I mean, we put a lot of thought into them, and we shared a passion about, as you said in the introduction, about taking personal responsibility in your life. And we connected on a lot of our basic foundational values, and we wanted to bring those forward in the programs that we were developing and running. Right. So.
Yeah, and Mel and I have a real connection over what the fundamental message of our work is. With Mel, it's sort of, taking that personal responsibility. Mine is similar, but slightly different, because my company's called The Power You Are, not The Power You Have. Because anything you have, like if I have this pen, it can be taken away from me. But power you are, it's what you embody. And power by definition is your ability to create or affect change. So if you can change something, you have the power to do that. But if you can't change anything, you've got no power. So the more power or ability you have to affect change, the more powerful you are. But my argument here is that everybody's presence alone creates change. You being in a room affects change just by virtue of your presence. You don't have to say anything or do anything. And the more wisely you use your presence, the more you can affect change without even doing or saying anything. But part of FST is, and this is where the two philosophies mesh, is that I'm really passionate about having people accept personal responsibility for their influence and how they're affecting the conditions of the very environment they're a part of. Because we have this misperception that we're in an environment and we're surrounded by everything around us. We forget that the life isn't happening to me, it's actually happening through me, because you're part of my environment, I'm part of your environment. We together are the environment. And because of that, everything I do, what I'm witnessing in behavior around me is an adaptation to my presence. So if I change the nature of my presence, the adaptation changes. And so I can change people's behavior by how I behave.
Right.
Can't control anything outside of me. I can only control this. And if I accept responsibility for this and how I'm influencing, well, and then I have a background in hypnotherapy, NLP, and all of those great subliminal communication type of modalities, and we incorporate a lot of that. We have a module on body language and things like that where we help people learn about nonverbal communication. But the truth is, we all know nonverbal communication. It's the first thing we learn when we're babies. So we all know this stuff intuitively. It's just about bringing what we're normally blind to into direct focus.
Right.
And so one of the examples that we recently came up with that when it comes to learning, like one of the things that we say is like, you already know this stuff,
Yeah, sure.
The question is, are you using it? And are you using it, and we're here to point out blind spots and what it is that keeps you from doing what you know you should be doing.
Right.
So.
Well, I think there's always that difference between I know that what I should know, but it's about like actually implementing it or doing something with it, right? There's always a huge gap. Well, not always, but can be quite the gap between those two things. It's like, I know smoking's bad for me, but I'm still doing it as an example. But that can come right down, like you say, Trent, right into our own actions and our responsibility and how we show up. Be like, I know that like 97% of all or 93% of all my communication is happening before I even open my mouth. But am I actually being aware and consistent and like trying to be, actually be informed about what that is saying, right? I could be like, I'm all happy. Like it's like, that's one of the tricks you used to teach us as well from the group is like, it can be just as much of shifting from that.
Absolutely.
And so what I've heard as well is like your guys, 2013 is when you started jamming together. So now we're 8 years into a partnership. That's a pretty significant relationship to have been built. But what I hear is the underpinning is it comes from shared values and being able to build something, co-create something around having those anchors that you guys can share together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, when we take a look, like I have a little exercise I sometimes put people through, and I call it the song of your soul. And it is a series of questions that sort of grabs at the essence of what would be a key message you'd want to leave if you were on your deathbed and only had 30 seconds to say what's one thing you'd want. If they did this one thing, and you can't think about the answer, it just has to be a reaction. If you had one thing to tell the world, if they just did this one thing, that their life would get better and better, what would it be? And whatever comes to your mind instantly would be that song. This is sort of your fundamental message. And, I have different messages from different people, but mine was, you are power, use yourself wisely. When I put myself through it, I thought, wow, you are. And Mel, it was, that accept personal responsibility for, so we know what our main message is. Like, what's your main frustration with humanity? If humanity just did this one thing. And I think that's the thing, that all of us are here to share a particular message or a particular song, and we're here to sing together. And when we listen to our own song and others and adapt to them or abide by them, what I heard one person call about adjusting your moral compass. Like, when you live true to your own values, you have this integrity and this strength of purpose within what it is that you can, how to direct your life.
Right.
Basically, if you know what your key message is with Pealed Back, you will, everything that you say, all the guests you have on will all have a common theme, because it all fits into the main message that you want the world to hear. And it's something that we need to be reminded of about ourselves, these messages, these songs of the soul, that we know, again, it's something we know deep in here, but we're not always conscious of. And
So it sounds like the responsibility and the song of your souls really kind of tied you guys together. Before we get into like FST, like, what is the thing? How do you guys maintain this partnership? Because a lot can change over the course of 8 years. Well, Trent, you're out of country right now, so like, how have you guys worked to maintain this partnership and this, this really rich values-based relationship?
Oh, I think, just from my perspective, we get on really well, and often when we're developing programs, etc., we may discuss or argue over a point, and we'll both listen and we'll both hear each other out, and we really active listen. So we're not listening to make a judgment or to defend or agree or disagree. We're listening to understand what the other person is saying. And when we do that, basically what happens on the different modules, we should do this, we should that, what about this? And then all of a sudden, yes, that's it. And both of us align very, very quickly. Yeah. So it's often like, you're writing music together and somebody will do the words and somebody do the tunes. So we're focusing on, it's not about within our relationship, our working relationship. It's not about who does what. It's about what needs to be done. And let's put it out there and both come to a conclusion. And over the 8 years, whatever, we've been homing the foundation of successful teams. So from what it started off in the beginning to where it is now is totally different. And one of the things that we get frustrated with sometimes is lots of people tell you, why you should do it and what you should do, but the how is missing.
Right.
You read that in self-help books or leadership, etc. They tell you, why it's important and what is it, but then it's about giving individuals, here's the one thing you can do to make that change. And that little change, even accepting personal responsibility for how you show up, will make a difference in your life. And as Trent was saying earlier on, it's about, what have you got influence over? And you have influence over your mood.
Right.
And then we teach them how to manage that. And then if you focus on that area, it goes into, if you're doing that. So we practice every day what we're teaching or communicating about. So that's
well. And if I was to add to that, I would say that part of what allowed us to work well together this length of time is it's a part-time gig too. We don't spend 24/7 together. So he's got his own projects he's doing, I got my own, and that keeps sort of a freshness there. We're not totally leaning on each other. So, and the other thing that I would say that Mel's been really good at, I hope I've been good at, is supporting each other in personal needs. Like we'll talk about things that are going on in our personal life and support each other with that. Like if one needs time away or time off, we help with that. Like it's like I'll take up the slack or you take up the slack, and then we all agree on what each of us has our own wheelhouse, certain strengths that we have, and we'll play to those. So Mel's really great at getting the ideas down and started and writing first drafts, and I'll take it and hone it, and he says I put my word magic to it. So then so we found a way to work together, and in the midst of the whole fighting between us, it's always quite fun actually, but we're never fighting each other, we're fighting for the best product.
Right.
So if I like it and he doesn't, or he likes it and I don't, and then we don't use it. It has to be something we both like, and then we'll test it on a third party, and if they like it, then we know it's good, it's a keeper.
Right. It's the striving for excellence over your own self interests, and allows you guys to create some magic there, right? Obviously I've dealt with FST, but this is really that whole theory about putting the problem in front of both of you and not between the two of you, right?
Right, and you bring up a great point, and I wanted to just say that, I mean, if we were to sum up why we work together well, we both leave our egos at the door. Yeah. It's not about me, it's not about him, it's about the piece of work.
Yeah.
Itself, yeah.
And we're not calling Mel a piece of work. It's the piece of work that you create.
I mean,
I can be a piece of work.
There's nothing easy about either of us. I mean, I'm quirky, he's quirky, and we both have colorful language together. So and we have quite interesting nicknames for each other. But I don't know, it's not a child-friendly nickname.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. Oh, you've heard it. I've said the same to you. You have the same nickname. Mofo. That's the friendly part. Okay.
That's the PG version, and it's always welcome as such a. It always puts a smile on my face because it comes from a great spot, right?
You don't know, we're not that kind of people, so that's why it's so funny coming from us.
Well, let's talk a little bit. Like we skipped around a little bit about what FST is. So, what is it at its heart? And let's dive into what it is, and then we'll go forward from there.
Well, if I could just kick in, I'm going to speak from my point, and Malcolm, because I think that we both contributed our own passions to it. For me, what bothers me most about corporate culture, this is me just going on my little rant, okay?
All right, we got the soapbox out.
Yeah, here we go. No one has to agree with what I have to say, but the exposure that I've had to corporate culture and the stereotypical corporate culture is, and even you go back to the 50s, 60s, and so on, and all the way through to today, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and it's a lot about competition, and then that competition is brought in within the company, and it's not professional to talk about your feelings, right? So you keep the feelings at the door. Let's all be professional here. And well, I often ask, what is the difference between a human being and a robot? Gene? What's the difference? Yeah, human being and a robot, as far as you're concerned, the significant difference.
Feelings and emotions, right? Is like that's the critical component difference.
Absolutely, and that's the answer we always get from every time we ask that question. People say, "Oh, people have feelings." That's right. So if we have to leave our feelings at the door, you're asking me not to be a human being. But the truth is, feelings are all over work. People are stressed, they're pissed off, they're angry, they're happy, you know, and we're all pointing fingers at each other, saying, you're stressing me out, you're pissing me off, you're making me happy, and no one's accepting responsibility for their own emotions.
Right.
And it's the most influential part of your presence is your mood, and no one's managing it. And so it's a freaking storm, and then no one's got the language to manage that. So enter what's his name, Daniel Goleman, who he coins the phrase emotional intelligence and writes a beautiful book on the essence of that. But it really is, emotional intelligence is all about understanding how to deal with emotions and how to communicate effectively about emotions and how to include that into what I call a human environment. Corporate environments they're supposed to be sterile and robot-like, and everyone gets treated like a physician and no one's treated like a human being. And we're not allowed to talk about our feelings, and it creates an inefficiency that is just crazy. And we've done some research, and there was a 10-year study done on culture-based, culture-focused companies and non-culture-focused companies over 10 years, how well they did. And I have the stats here, probably tell you later on, but it's significant that the people that are focusing on culture, which is really the emotional environment that we're working in, and working with that and having a language to deal with that, then we're basically, FST is here to put the humanity back in business,
right?
Into the world of business, I should say, and give people, and we don't say we'll talk about our feelings, we use the word mood because it's far more acceptable. But if we're managing our moods and we're teaching that emotional intelligence that way, then, oh my God, you should see the results. I mean, it's incredible. Anyways, I'll let Mel give his. I got to point this way.
I almost forget the question, but I'm just going to pick up on mood, because within organizations, you hear, what's the mood of the meeting? What's the boss's mood in today? Oh, don't go near them, they're in a bad mood. And they're talking about moods all the time. And even at home, because FST actually applies to any relationships, right? Be them in the home environment or the work environment. And it's like, oh, don't go into the kitchen, your dad's in a bad mood, or your mum's in a bad mood, and all that type of thing. So we do talk about mood all the time. And FST does focus it has 7 modules, but the first 2 modules are really around accepting responsibility and how do we engage with others. And when we talk about engagement, it's, do you want to feel people, when you engage with somebody, feel deflated or happy about it? And we use a metaphor like a waterfall or a fountain. When we say the connection is, you're either nourishing the person or poisoning them with how you interact. And most people, if you ask the question, want to feel that they left the other person feeling better. And if you have that intention when you're managing your mood, then that'll be the outcome of it. But what was the question?
It was about why FST for you? Yeah. Like, what's the important part of it?
Yes. So what it was, and kind of getting to like the heart of it, right? So it sounds like the heart of it really comes back down to, Trent used the word cultural, which we'll get into in a minute, but it's about not so much managing your mood, but the awareness of your mood, and then taking responsibility for the actions and your interactions due to how you're presenting yourself through that other 93% of your language that you're.
Well, I grew up in the corporate world, worked with large companies, etc., board level, etc. And I think my frustration came from, that people were scudding around the issues and they weren't seeing, like you saw somebody as a position, right? And not as a person. Right. And people often put their power into their position, but as soon as the position's gone, so is the power. But a position, as we know, is just a set of responsibilities. That's all it is. And that's filled by a person. and the way we connect. So it's seeing people as a person first. And I got so frustrated, worked on lots of projects, and they all failed because of people, and they all failed because of the conflicts and how people engage and all that type of thing, and the interaction between different departments, and the power level struggles within organizations, and they're basically a waste of time. And so that's where the FST came in, about how do you create a culture like of mutual respect, where people can have a safe and healthy environment. And as Trent said, there's lots of examples of organizations that focus on the culture, and the statistics that show that are incredible. But it's also, we also talk, it's not about being all nicey and softy and all the rubbish that you hear. You hear, oh, that's all soft stuff. That's bullshit. That's like people, they don't feel comfortable in that world, right? We are people. They don't feel, so they don't want to be it. So they go back to their norms, right? And that's the egos and narcissists and all that type of thing that you have.
Right.
So that was my passion about. How do we make this? How do we make organizations better? And you make it better through the people.
Right. So it sounds like the true underpinning around this is actually like the term psychological safety, right? Is like you use the word like people feeling safe, beating around the bush, and not taking responsibility for their actions and all this other stuff. And they're doing that because there's a lack of safety being able to show up and say what actually needs to be said.
Yeah, well, let me sum it up with Mel and I are in the process of putting a book together. We're writing a book around the FST material, and it's geared at not just corporations, but also the average person, because we deal with what I call human environments. Any environment that's a bunch of human beings together, there's a dynamic at play, and there's blind spots that we all suffer from. So if you imagine a bunch of people in a swimming pool, the one thing that we all share when we're in a swimming pool is the quality of the water, right? And so one of the lines that we came up with, because part of the training is how can we hold each other accountable for maintaining a personal responsibility for how we're contributing. So we used the line, are you peeing in the pool? Because if I'm gossiping or I'm complaining or whatever, it's the equivalent of peeing in the pool, and suddenly the quality of the water just went down a bunch. And I'm all mad, and I said, here, swim in that. Mm-hmm. And you'd be like, ooh, dude, but if that guy over in accounting peed in the pool and that lady over there in sales peed in the pool, now the whole conditions in the pool are getting worse and worse. But there are other people that are carrying filters that are cleaning the water as they go. So the conditions of the water are always in flux. And if we're all accepting responsibility for whether we're making the water a little bit dirtier, peeing in the pool, or if we're cleaning the water, if everyone took responsibility and just noted how they were contributing to the conditions and the emotional or the water at work, the one environment that we all share is the emotional environment. What's the mood at work? What a culture is the overall long-term mood at work. And so what's it like to go to work there? If you ask someone, it's kind of gloomy, Weather is day to day. Climate is the average of the weather that are long term, and cultures like climate. You can have different weather. So if we're taking care of the weather, making sunny weather every day, the climate just gets a lot better at work. So are you peeing in the pool is really the main thing, and that's the name of the book. Right?
So there's a thin line between pristine and piss. It's like what I'm hearing. It's the R, right? Pristine or pristine, and the R, is it, are you the one? Are you the one peeing in the pool? Yeah. But a lot of people will point at each other while they're peeing in the pool for someone else peeing in the pool, because blaming someone for something is also peeing in the pool. Like, let's accept, it's just, and we don't know what we don't know until we point it all out, and then we hold each other accountable, and ourselves in the process. But if you can do it in a way that's fun. See, cultures are also held in place by language. And we show people different language patterns. We teach a little bit of what's called nonviolent communication, which is, the average language patterns that we grow up with are what Marshall Rosenberg would call, who's the inventor or the creator of nonviolent communication. He would call this the language of dominance, where
we're talking in terms of reward and punishment. It's what we grew up at school. You got this wrong, you got this right, and we're always taught to listen, to agree or disagree with something. So no one really listens. They're just listening to wait their turn. And right. What we do with nonviolent communication, it's a whole different intent. It's all about, are your needs being met, and are my needs being met? And it's about how are we helping each other meet each other's needs? So if I get into the drama, I said, Gene, you're always putting your shit all over my desk, and you'd be like, well, fine, you're always, doing this and this, and then we're fighting already, and we get into the drama of it all. I'm right, you're right, I'm wrong, you're wrong. But if I did that and I said, Gene, you're always putting shit all over my desk, and you say, well, okay, well, what do you need? Whoa, there's no fight that can happen. Well, I want to fight, but you're saying, well, what do you need?
Yeah.
Well, I need you to take your stuff off my desk. Okay. What else? Now, do you know what I mean? And if we focus on meeting each other's needs, and that's a primary focus, the culture's already getting better.
Right.
And the language supports that. And then we give actual specific patterns of how to say certain things to prevent conflict in the first place, and then how to deal with conflict when it comes up. And so those are some of the gems,
Trent, you mentioned school there. At one stage, I went home to my mum and I said, I think the lady teacher fancies me. And she said, why? It says, because she keeps on putting kisses all over my copybook. That's just a wee story I thought of. But when you start, as Trent says, when you start seeing people peeing in the pool, you're looking at people that are not taking ownership. They're blaming others. They're not engaging. The senior management are frustrated with things. And what this program does over the, the different modules, the taking responsibility, engagement, person in position, collaboration, seeing is believing, building trust, all that type of thing. And because it's over a period of time, it's over 14 weeks.
12 weeks.
Yeah, 12 to 14 weeks. And the first 6 modules, both myself and Trent are teaching. And they're only 2 hours. And we give them just one thing to do. And they start building on those one things. So by the end of it, now they've 6 things that have changed. And we can see dramatic changes in the individuals over that period of time. And the last module is they have to teach us what we taught them.
And so presentations for us,
yeah. So therefore we know the learning, and as we go through it, you're hearing so what worked well for you this week, and we've had there was a story, I think, Trent, you remember, one of the girls in an organization, she had not a good relationship with her father, right?
For about 10 years, they had a strained relationship and they weren't speaking. And after the 3rd module of something really clicked for her, and she took it upon herself to call her father. And then that weekend they had met and they healed their relationship. And she came back and told the story for us and shared it with us and thanked us for it, because it had been a long time and they both actually missed each other, but they were both like this, and no one's taking the responsibility to go first and use a different way of speaking, rather than the right, wrong, but how to, meet each other's needs. And this is really the important thing. There's so much, but go ahead with the next question, because otherwise we'll just go out of left field and end up telling jokes, right?
No, I talk about some of the things that people can take away from this and apply it, right? This isn't just about building a strong team at work. These are skills that you're going to take to build strong, because everywhere that we have teams, right? Your family is a team, your friends are teams, your acquaintances, how you show up on LinkedIn or whatever social platform you are. They're all like an extension of a team. So how are you showing up there, and what are you leading with? And one of the other pieces that I really take from both of you here is the removal of right versus wrong, talking about it just is, right? If it just is, then it's not a matter of it being right or wrong. It's something that you can work towards, and you can choose that we don't want it like this. We choose to create something a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, let me add to what you're saying, if you don't mind. I often think in terms of every single point of view is different, because we're all looking at the same thing from different angles. So, and if I stand there and I say this point of view is me, that's what we call an opinion. My opinion, I sort of identify with it. Now I have to defend it because, and this is where we all get, I think, in trouble. If you think about each opinion or each point of view like a piece of a jigsaw puzzle, they all fit together to create a bigger picture, right? And because we all have different angles that we're looking at the same thing at. And I've often thought, how often have you dumped out a little jigsaw puzzle and had all the pieces start fighting with each other? Like, that puts it into perspective, doesn't it? They don't. They're meant to fit together. So let's fit them all together and see what the big picture is. And that just puts an end to everything. Look, you're not right or wrong. I'm not right or wrong. You're right and wrong, because, and I'm humble enough to know that I can only see so much. I don't know everything about everything. I only know what I know, but I know that that's just a piece. So there is some truth in what I'm saying, but it's not the complete truth. We all treat our little pieces of the puzzle like the whole picture, and it's not.
Yeah.
We all have a piece of it. And so we want to put that together. And this is the whole collaborative thing. And even our logo for Foundation of Successful Teams has people putting their puzzle pieces together, right. Which is the collaborative opinions to that we all matter. We're all important, and every point of view is essential to a more holistic. And wouldn't that be good if people thought this way right now with all the division going on in the world? Like,
imagine.
Yeah, just
imagine that going, I've got my piece, instead of this being the all holy truth, and this is everything. Be like, what if I put it down and find out that I can make my perspective a little bit wider? And we had some more pieces, and now all of a sudden we're like, wow, we have a picture here.
Yeah.
Do we all like this picture? No? What pieces of the picture do we love? And then we can start from a place of building.
And what pieces are missing?
Yeah.
Right? Because there's sometimes gaps, and we're like, we need more perspectives. So yeah, anyway, that was just another metaphor. It maybe helps. Let me offer a takeaway if I could.
Yes,
like
please.
you had mentioned this earlier about a takeaway, and I'll just add another story to the mix here, because Mel and I teach a module called Person in Perspective, and he'd already alluded to it and told a little bit about it, where we talk about the difference between a person and a position. So a position's a set of responsibilities. That's all it is. And then you have the person who's filling it. And when you're talking to a person, you're not talking to a set of responsibilities. The set of responsibilities is not listening to you. It's a human being, right? So a couple stories actually I have for this. So one, it's a fellow I knew, a radio station engineer, and people will come up to him, and when their stuff was going wrong, or when they're changing the software out in a radio station, all the sound rooms and everything, everyone wants their stuff now, and there's only one guy to do it all. And he's got a whole pile on his desk of files and who's in what order. So if someone comes in and they don't say, and we'll call him John. Hey, John, how was your weekend? How was your wife? And did your dog get to the vet and back? Oh, yeah. So being personable first, right? But if someone comes in and says, John, I need my computer fixed. He says, oh, yeah, okay. And then he says, he told me himself, and I wasn't even talking about the program with him, but he says, when people do that to me, he says, I take their file and I put it right to the bottom. Now, is that good for the company? Is that really efficient? No, but he's doing it because he was hurt as a person.
Right. So
we say treat people as people first. The other story that I'll quickly tell is we had a fellow a long time ago who had a 4-year-old, and he was having trouble with the 4-year-old not cleaning up after and not doing his little chores that he had been told. So clean up your room, and the kid wasn't doing it. And he talked to us about it, and I said, well, try this. And he says, okay. We talked about person and perspective. I said, look, this applies at home too. You're a dad, you're a human being, your little boy's a human being, but you're also filling the position of dad, and he's he's the kid. But I said, just be people, just treat him like a little person first. And he said, my son loves Batman. And he says he's always wearing his little Batman cape and running around being Batman. And Batman needed to make his bed. So he went in and he says, all right, son. He says, can you tell me something, Batman? Have you seen my boy around here? He says, no. He says, well, I've always been curious. How fast can Batman make a bed? Oh, that's how fast. And he's like, whoa, that is fast. I wonder how fast Batman could put my boy's socks away. Oh, watch this. Boom, 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 boom. Pretty soon the room was clean. Yeah. But he joined him in. He was with him as a person. And this is the thing. We work with people, not positions. But when we don't know how to talk about feelings or anything, we resort to our positions. You just do your job or you're fired. Get out of here. Like, pulling rank all the time. And it just takes, again, we're human beings first. So let's just be human beings first. And if we have a language that supports that without getting unprofessional, like the whole thing is, we can't be all woo-woo and kumbaya and still be professional. Well, we're not woo-woo or kumbaya. We're just maintaining a more balanced language between person, which is the human element, which is speaking about the mood and the feelings and how to maintain that, your emotional state. That's more of a scientific term that we would use as well, your emotional state. And then your set of responsibilities, and how do you address that when someone's not dealing with their responsibilities? So how now I have to bring more attention to the fact that this person has a set of responsibilities they're not tending to because they're playing too much. Right. Like I used to be in school, Trent, you're playing too much. I said, well, I'm already done. Smart ass. But anyway, yeah. Mel, I'm sorry, I was a real hog with all the words there.
No, it's great. It's great. It's I'm passionate about the program. We've delivered it in several large organizations. And the results we've got are amazing. One of the key top organizations in the oil and gas industry invited us back when we ran the program a few years ago, and they brought on a bunch of new people. And they said, you have to do the FST. We want them to fit into the culture, and they want them to learn the terminology. And, as we say, look, we're not going to teach you anything. This stuff. Yeah. The question is, are you doing it? And are you doing it consistently? And that's the most important thing. And what the modules do, they get them to do it consistently. And, all I can say, the stories that you get back and the changes you see in individuals, because they say, this helped me and this has improved
marriage.
I was walking in Kelowna, and we were with a company in Kelowna, and I met one of the guys and his wife actually walking down the promenade. And he came along and he said, oh, hi, this is Mel here. Remember the guy I was telling you about blah, 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 doing the FST? And the wife said, so you're the guy responsible for changing my husband around to be a nice guy?
Yeah.
Well, and I said, no, I'm not. He just did it, and he learned and stuff like that. And organizations, and one of the, we're talking about increasing revenue. We're talking about increasing employee engagement. We're talking about reducing conflict. We talk about conflict management. Well, we talk about conflict prevention. And it's not letting it happen, and giving people a language of how to interact and engage. And as Trent said earlier on, some of them are using, are you peeing in the pool? And we're seeing the mood of meetings improve dramatically, with people addressing the elephant in the room, people being a lot more curious, people listening to understand what the person is saying, not listening to agree or disagree.
That's a key one. That's a key one.
And people. Yeah, people want to feel heard and understood. So, it's getting them to practice that. And once the team, even project teams, and then once they see that, and they have a set of I suppose, a language and a way of working, the environment automatically becomes much safer. And people and ideas come out better, and it's not about, we tried that before and all that type of thing. And it's not about my position, as strengths and my ego. It's about, we're here, we're fighting for something, right?
Yeah.
So it's understanding that.
I want to add a little bit, Gene, because there's one thing we failed to mention, which is a real important part of FST, and that is we bring in a lot of science. We back everything we say with science. This isn't coming from us, it's coming through us from various studies or various people that have reported on studies, and we bring data and facts to justify the principle that we teach. So FST distills a culture of mutual respect and appreciation into 7 key behaviors. And one of the behaviors is integrated into each module. So there's 6 modules that they're learning, but one of them is basically the element of daily practice and consistency. And when we're doing that, then it's integrated into all of them. It used to be its own module, but we took it out and integrated into all because it's way better that way. But with that, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, the science, sorry. So just like, so there's always stats and there's always science behind like nonverbal communication, where it's all coming from. But one of the things too, depending on the audience, but I will sometimes bring in, and this is getting more and more popular all the time, because the science is catching up with emotion. So you have like science from the HeartMath Institute, in Northern California, and they talk about the heart actually generating an electromagnetic field, and it's a very powerful field, and how the heart is hugely intelligent, sends more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. But just keeping it in the realm of mood, your heart rate variability means that your heart beats and it goes bump, 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 and at the peak of each heartbeat, the distances vary, and the more variable those distances are between the heartbeats, the healthier you are. And they also have a signature given whatever emotion. So your emotional information is encoded in the field that you're generating. And we, as living fields of energy, live in an entirely huge, like the universal field of energy. And so it's a field of intelligence, and you are a local field of intelligence within that. And what happens is something called the law of entrainment and resonance, that if you're in a really strong mood, and people, the way we experience it is like this: you go into an office and everyone's in a pretty good mood, but the boss comes in and he's in a really bad mood, and he brings the whole mood in the office down. You felt that before, Gene?
Yep.
Yeah. I also remember, I used to work for my dad a long time ago in a cabinet shop, and it's like 30 below in Edmonton, and we had to hand bomb a bunch of sheets off of a truck and open the big bay door, so everyone has to wrap up. We got to pull these sheets off, and the guy who was delivering was originally from Jamaica, and he's like, "Hey man, it's a beautiful day, man, look at that." And he's just a beautiful smile and a beautiful attitude for such a cold day, and all the guys in the shop were so miserable already. They're all in a pissy mood, and then they had to open the door, and they're like, "Oh fuck, I got to get dressed," just because we got 30 below weather coming in for the next 20 minutes while they hand bomb all these sheets off the truck. But this guy was like, "Oh, it's a beautiful day, come on," and he's just dancing and helping put the sheets off. I started smiling and singing with the guy. By the time he left, it was cold and shop, but everyone was in a great mood. His energy was so contagious. Now there's a scientific term now called emotional contagion. We bring this into the training as well, talking about emotional contagion, but it's also part of what I call the power you are. If you understand how to manage your mood and not be affected by the outside, you can go in to an environment where people are a bit grumpy and actually turn it around. Why? Because everything being energy, they're an oscillating system that's trying to entrain you. But if you can't be entrained, they have to, because in nature, there's a rule, it says evolve or die. You either adapt to the changes in the environment or you leave the environment. And so the more powerful energy wins. And so no longer are your circumstances determining your feelings, but your feelings are determining your circumstances. And this is sort of next level stuff, but it's so powerful. It's like Jedi Knight tricks, and it really is pretty cool. And I get some clients from the FST, and then we go on to teach this kind of stuff. He says, "Trent, you wouldn't believe what I did today." And it's like, these are not the droids you're looking for, And
like, this is the culture you're looking for.
This is Well, he for example, one of them, he would come into the office. He says, "I am so good. Like I can feel the frustration the moment I come in, and I just change my energy like a pulse. You go in and talk to a couple of people, and pretty soon everyone's telling jokes." And he says, boom, so cool. So there's like, this is really interesting stuff when you dive deep. And we had a guy recently with the oil and gas company, first 2 modules, and the boss told us this later. He's like, and of course, when you're an employee for a company and the boss says, "You're going to be sitting and you're going to take this course every Monday for the next 7 weeks, It's like, all right, I didn't sign up for this. So he's one of these curmudgeons for a while. But first one, he's like, "Where's this stuff going?" Second one, by the 3rd module, he says, it clicked, and he started getting it, and he started seeing the value in it. And he actually phoned the boss at the end and says, "Thank you so much for this. I didn't get it at first, but now I get it. My relationships at home's already getting better, stuff at work." And what's really cool is, because we're talking about how to deal with people in a way that makes them feel great. So Elevate as You Engage is our 2nd module, and it's about leaving things a little bit better than when you found them. So not only do the leadership know how to treat their employees in a way that elevates them, but the employees treat each other this way. But when you've got guys out in the field dealing with the client, they're the front line. Imagine them making clients feel better. profits go up, efficiency goes up. There's a great book I could recommend called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Achor. And it talks all about the science of when you're in a happy mood, like, what's his name? Schweitzer. He's a Nobel Prize winning doctor from a long time ago, but he's got this great quote that says, success does not lead to happiness. Happiness leads to success. And in The Happiness Advantage, they talk about how that is the scientific truth. That every emotion is an actual operating system. And when you're happy and you're highly efficient, your brain is working at a highly, you get into these flow states you hear about. These are highly functioning, positive emotional states. When you get frustrated, if you try and make any decisions and act on them while you're angry, frustrated, depressed, sad, you are going to create trouble, mistakes, because you've got more blind spots. And your IQ goes down under stress. Now, here's another thing to think about. If you see a needle, like a meter, and in the center is 0, right side of 0 is positive, left side of 0 is negative. Everything left side of 0 is a negative emotion. All our names for the different negative emotions are just words that represent variant states of stress. Like depression, sadness, anger, frustration. These are all various states of stress. They're all stress. And so knowing how to manage your stress, and we talk about physical breathing techniques, there's physiological ways to do it, mental ways to do it. And people become, like I say, a little bit of Jedi Knights, and they start really enjoying the process of how they're able to influence people at home and at work. And because you realize this power that you really are,
Right.
that you really are, and you don't have to control anybody. So I'll just throw this out if you don't mind, but another metaphor came to mind that we use that people really love, and maybe the viewers would like this as well. We say that every relationship is like a tennis game.
Yeah.
And only the rules are a bit different. And the object of a game in the relationship tennis game is that there's no net, and the object is just to keep the ball going back and forth. So that ball represents the communication. You just want to keep it going back and forth, and that makes for a healthy, good relationship. But there's two aspects here. If I'm playing tennis with you, Gene, I can't control you, but I can influence you.
Yes.
By how I hit the ball to you. So if I want you to go to that part of the court, I just knock the ball over there. You got to go over there to hit it back. So, and you can influence me the same way by knocking the ball. Now, the best thing, if we want to keep that ball going back and forth, the best thing I can do is hit it to you in a way that makes it real easy for you to hit it back. And if we play by that rule, like meeting each other's knees rather than right or wrong, then we're keeping that ball moving, and it's really healthy. So if you looked at a tennis game from the side and made the players invisible, all you see is that ball going back and forth. That's the relationship dynamic. That is the energy going between the people. And if they're angry, it kind of looks like this. And if they're happy, it kind of looks like this. And so while I can't control you, I can influence you by two things: how I hit the ball to you. So we use that as a self-check question. How am I hitting the ball to this person? And then how am I positioning myself to receive the ball? So how well am I listening? What story am I telling myself when they're telling me this? Am I listening to understand, or am I listening to agree or disagree? So we've given a lot of gems away on this. If you put it all together, we could start just going to work tomorrow and start changing stuff. Right?
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of gems here. Go ahead, Mel. Sorry.
I was going to say one of the key things as well is, in relation to within organizations is everyone ends up understanding that they are 100% responsible for how they show up. And senior management and leadership have a big influence on how things happen. And if they're behaving in a way that's inappropriate within the organization, it has a major negative impact on people within the organization. So, but once they start using the foundation of successful teams habits, etc., then they start to change, and the change in the people that work alongside them, etc., is dramatic, right? And I remember a long time ago doing a program, a cultural change in an organization, and everyone saying, yeah, we're going to do this, and it was like, as I said, climbing a mountain, right? And you're leading the way, and people within organizations that are trying to lead change, and they're putting in the pegs into the mountain, and they're putting the rope in, and loads of people behind them, and everything like that. And as soon as they stop and look down, everyone's in against the wall, putting it all up and working. But then as soon as they start going in, they're all swinging out of the rope. Yeah. All of this is great stuff, you know. So it's not an easy task, especially for those that want to bring a change into an organization. It takes courage.
Yeah.
So
it's all about curiosity and courage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And addressing the elephant in the room. Yeah. You know, we all know it's there. Nobody says anything about it. You know, and elephants are bloody big. You'd imagine somebody would see it, but they, you know, they don't.
So there's so much that has been delivered here. I'm really looking forward to actually going through this one and taking some of these gems out. But so how can somebody get a hold of you guys? How, you know, if somebody's watching this and going, wow, I need this, my team needs this, what's that next step for them?
Well, the best way to do it is to just send us an email, mel@cliffordrobbins.com or trent@thepoweryouare.com.
Okay.
For now, go ahead.
Well, I put it in the, I was going to say, well, I put it in the chat box.
I think.
Gene is going to do it. Yeah, because it's CLIFFORDROBBINS. So it's mel@cliffordrobbins.com.
All right. As well, down in the show notes below is access through LinkedIn, and I believe both of your websites as well are in there. So if they want to get in touch, they can get in touch there. Absolutely.
We'd love to hear from people.
Gentlemen, This has been a great show. I always talk to everyone and be like, oh, we're going to get to the 40-minute mark and realize we've put a lot of time. So I want to be respectful of your time because we're at the 56-minute mark now. So last question I always ask everybody is, I've got a time machine. We're going to jump in. We're going to go back 10 years. You get to say one thing to your younger self. What would that be? What would that piece of advice be?
For me, it would be follow your heart. And I'd have to say I'd need to learn to say no more often. I take on too much. But I would say just go, you know, follow your heart and go with the universe because it's already planned. So, and treat people, you know, just, I wish I had known this stuff that I knew but couldn't do years ago. Anyway, that's right. I've said more than one thing, but that's
Trent, how about yourself?
Yeah, I would. Well, I think Mel stole mine, but it's very simple. It's trust your heart, but trust your intuition. I've learned a lot about that. Your gut instinct, your heart knows, and when you start to understand the difference between the two, this works on trust, this works on fear. This has a partial view of things, and this is connected to the field of intelligence that's like a GPS. Yeah. When you start to discern the difference, and you know, like, you just know hindsight's 20/20, and usually say, shit, I knew that. I knew it in here. I just didn't know. I wouldn't, you know, we're always afraid to follow that. And it takes courage because it goes against the grain to follow that.
So much.
So I would say, look, Trent, have courage and just face those fears. But, and the one thing that you know, Gene, it's part of your coaching now as well. But the one thing I'm a big advocate of and would have told myself to implement more 10 years ago is, look, don't get so overwhelmed. Whittle it down to one thing. And what's the one thing that you could do today to move yourself just a little bit forward and keep rolling? Because there's a great book called The One Thing. And he talks about the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. And then, 20% of your actions produce about 80% of your results. But within that 20% is another 20-80 split. So of the 5 things that you're doing that's creating all those results, 20% of those 5. And then of that is 20%, which usually will be this one thing. This one thing is creating more results for you than anything else. If you can whittle that down and figure out what that is, do that. And you'll move in leaps and bounds. So yeah,
I love it. And now to complete the circle, you stole my last thing, so we're just completing this thievery from everybody. So you know what? We're going to leave it off with the find one thing that Trent shared today. So let's leave it with that, gentlemen. Mel, Trent, thank you so much for being on episode 37. This was a blast, and I look forward to more of our conversations in the future. All right, everybody. Until next Wednesday.
See everybody. Take care. Thank you for joining in.
Thank you.
Take care.